Aloha everyone, this is Justin from Aloha Creative Design. Today we got Zack Hample with us. Hey Zack.
How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going really good. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I describe myself as a professional baseball nerd, and I guess what that means more specifically is I'm like a super fan, I guess, and I make my living in baseball, but sort of on the edges of baseball. I don't work for Major League Baseball, although I have in the past to some extent. But right now, my main thing is YouTube. I consider myself a full-time YouTuber. I've written 3 baseball books. I've worked as a baseball instructor. I wrote for minorleaguebaseball.com for 3 years. I run a business where I take people to baseball games. So you name it. If it's in the baseball world, I have probably had something to do with it.
What got you kind of into that field? Because I think that's a very unique field that not a lot of people have a job similar to that. So kind of what sparked your interest and what got you into doing this?
I was obsessed with baseball from the time I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I really wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and I never had a plan B. And I remember all the adults in my life were like, oh, you got to have something to fall back on in case that doesn't work out. And I was like, of course it's going to work out. Like, I'm the best baseball player I know. And, you know, when you're 10 years old or even 17 years old, that's cool. But then the competition catches up. So I feel like I'm the answer to my own question that I've wondered about actual Major League stars, which is like, what would so-and-so be doing with himself if he hadn't made it to the major leagues? And so it's like, this is what Zack Hample would have been doing. And I just kind of stumbled into it, really. My dad was a writer, and he encouraged me to write my first book and showed me how to outline it and help me edit it. But I did all the writing myself, and I wrote it when I was 19, and it came out when I was 21. And he was on TV a lot as well, and he had a very entertaining personality. So I think that sort of natural born performer part of me, or just the storyteller, also came from him. My mom was very encouraging of me to follow my own path. She is her own boss. She and her sisters own a bookstore, and my dad was a freelance writer. So neither of my parents ever had to answer to a boss, and they really set their own schedules. So I grew up with that in the back of my mind. And then all the YouTube stuff, I just kind of stumbled into, really thanks in part to the biggest baseball that I ever caught in my life. And I should mention, that's my weird claim to fame, is I go to Major League games and I catch baseballs. I've caught more baseballs in the stands at Major League stadiums than anyone ever. So A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, his 3,000th hit in 2015 at Yankee Stadium, it was a home run. And I happened to get that baseball, and really the attention from all of that helped launch everything that I'm doing on YouTube ever since.
Yeah, so I know about that one. We worked together on the website, and I've gotten to know you over the past couple of years. So when you caught the 3,000 hit, it kind of was this controversial thing, like, what should you do with it? And you were like, well, I don't really know what to do with it. Should I give it back? Should I do this? Should I do that? So why don't you walk us through kind of how that all happened and what that process was like?
It was so nuts. And the thing to know, especially if you're not a diehard baseball fan, is that when a player hits an important home run into the seats, whether it's his first career home run or maybe his 100th career home run, some players even, they'll hit a home run on Mother's Day, and that's special to them. The player always wants that baseball back. And if you're a fan and you get it, you're not legally obligated to give it back, but it's also assumed that you will give it back. And then it's assumed that you'll get something cool in exchange for it. And depending on how important that home run ball is to the player, you might get more stuff. So with A-Rod and his 3,000th hit, I think at the time there were less than 30 players ever who had gotten 3,000 hits. And 3 different 3,000th hits had been home runs, because you can just hit a single or a double and the ball stays on the field, and that's your 3,000th hit, and the left fielder just tosses it back in and they throw it to the dugout, and then the player has the ball. But if it's a home run, what are you going to do? And so the first 2 times that a guy had hit a home run for his 3,000th hit, the fan the fans who got it gave it back right away. And then here I was with the 3,000th hit. So at that moment, it was the only 3,000th hit owned by the public in Major League history. I mean, it was a very significant ball that the auction experts said could be worth $500,000. And of course, I didn't know that at the time that I got it, but I knew that it was like a potential six-figure ball. And there was this assumption that I would just give it back to him right away. And I was like, whoa, I don't know about that. Like, maybe, but I mean, I think I'm going to keep it or at least think about it and try to figure out what to do. And that generated a lot of controversy. It also didn't help that I had tweeted some dumb things right after getting the ball. And even the day that I got the ball, before I got it, I said something rude about A-Rod on Twitter. So the internet had a field day with me, and there was lots of negativity. And it was, I mean, I still cringe just thinking back at what a mess that was in my life at the time. But I think overall it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, because I know at the end you ended up giving it back to him and donating a lot of the money to charity, having Yankee Stadium give money to charity rather than taking it for yourself. So it ended up being a very fantastic thing that you thought about others rather than just yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still wish I had that baseball. It would be a great memento to, pass down generations in the family, whatever. But I don't know. I just realized that the ball could bring so much money to people in need of it. Like it's sort of bigger than just one fan having this 5-ounce object. Because the Yankees, that night that I got the ball, I met with the president of the team, Randy Levine, and he had done research on me in the few hours since I gotten the ball and learned that every year I was doing a fundraiser for a children's baseball charity called Pitch In for Baseball and Softball. They provide equipment to underprivileged kids all over the world. And so the president of the Yankees basically said, if it would help you decide what to do with the ball, because at that point I had kind of indicated that I was going to keep it, he said the Yankees would consider making a large donation to this charity. So then I was like, oh man, well, if that's the case, then I really have to take this seriously. And they did end up donating $150,000 to this charity. And it took 2 weeks for it to all play out. It took a few days to work out a deal. I brought the charity people in. We all met at Yankee Stadium. And by the time a deal was set in place, the Yankees were gone on an 8-day road trip. And so their first day back was exactly 2 weeks after I had gotten the ball. And there was just so much media attention in the meantime, and people assumed that I was keeping it and I was being a jerk and I was being selfish. The whole time I had a deal in place, but the Yankees wanted to be the ones to announce it. And they, of course, waited to announce it till the last second. Press conference at Yankee Stadium. I was sitting up there with A-Rod with 100 media people and the cameras. I mean, it was wild. And yeah, I handed him the ball, and there was, one of those big oversized checks, and there was a documentary film crew doing a shoot on me for Vice Sports. I mean, it was wild. I was up in the broadcast booth during the game, TV, radio. It was just like, it was truly a media blitz for 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, with that too, it's like we talk about other business owners because we're talking with small business owners and trying to inspire them and try and figure out how to make their businesses better. How do you think social media has affected you as your professional career has advanced, and what would have happened if social media really didn't play a part into it?
Well, I wouldn't even have a career or this career if not for the internet. So I don't know what I would be doing with myself if I'd been born, 20 years earlier or even 10. I mean, sure, YouTube has been a thing for a little while, but Major League Baseball itself was much more protective of its intellectual property until the last few years. So if I had been going to baseball games and filming myself running around catching balls even 10 years ago, I think I would have gotten kicked off of YouTube by Major League Baseball. But then a new commissioner took over, and younger people are running the sport from the inside, and they understand the power of social media. So rather than chasing people away who are showing stuff, they're embracing it. I mean, it's just like when televised baseball first became a thing, in in the first half of the 20th century, owners were concerned that fans wouldn't pay to go to games if they could stay home and watch it for free, but it had the opposite effect. Fans got so crazy and passionate watching their favorite players on TV that they then wanted to go in person and pay that money for the ticket to see it. And it's the same thing with social media and YouTube. You know, Major League Baseball at first was chasing people away who were showing stuff, but now they're like, oh, no, this is what we need to do to attract the younger audience and the younger generation. And so for me, yeah, everything I do is centered on social media. And I don't think I would really be that active on social media if not for having this career that I need to promote. Because the more eyeballs find me on any of the social medias, like, I mean, I have my YouTube link on my Twitter, on my Instagram, on my TikTok. So anybody who sees me there could potentially click on it. It's more views, it's more subscribers, it's more ad revenue when people watch. I can ask for more money from sponsors if they want me to shout them out in a video. I'm going to sell more merch. Like, more people will hire me to go to baseball games. I'm doing shout outs on Cameo now. So really, the more people that see me, just the more of everything and anything can happen. So it's really important for me to stay active and visible on there.
Yeah, so I guess rewinding it a bit is like the first video that you ever did, was it something that you were really nervous and scared to be on the video, and then you were like, well, this isn't really perfect. Do I really post this? How's this going to work? Like, what was that like?
I started my YouTube channel for one purpose, which is not at all what I'm doing with it now. And that was back in like 07, I guess, maybe 08. I wanted to post clips of myself being interviewed on TV so that I could then send a link to those interviews to my friends and family. That's it. And then, of course, my interviews, my TV spots started getting taken down by YouTube for copyright infringement. And I was like, what? Like, it's like me on the interview. Like, why can't I post myself? And I didn't realize that even though it's me, it's still footage that's owned by the networks. And it wasn't monetized. I wasn't making money from it. It was just like this other random thing that I could share stuff on. And so I really didn't do much with my channel for years. I just posted the occasional random clip. Still wasn't monetized. I got the A-Rod ball in 2015. Still wasn't monetized. I had already done a few stadium videos by that point, which is really my calling card. Like, what people want to see is me at a major league stadium, running around, catching baseballs, interacting with the players, eating weird food, showing different nooks and crannies of the ballpark. And I didn't really get into that until around the A-Rod time, but it wasn't even until the next year that I finally monetized my channel and I realized that there was money to be made. So there wasn't like one first video where I was like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. I stumbled into it with, at the time, a friend was a videographer, and he was like, we should do some videos, and they were very short and primitive, and I look back at them now and it's like, yeah, that's not very good, but you know, they started getting some views once the whole A-Rod thing happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely progressed over time. So I guess with that too is like the monetization and sponsors and all those sorts of things. Are these companies and people that you're having to reach out to, or are they just reaching out to you and being like, hey, we want you to do this or that, or wear a shirt or wear a hat and we'll pay you money for it? How does that all work?
I don't reach out to any sponsors. It all just happens to come to me at this point, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't offer enough money to make it worthwhile to me. Some places just want to offer free product, or they'll say, yeah, mention us and include a link, you know, in your video in the description, and then anybody who pays for a membership or who buys the thing will give you a percentage. And it's just like, no. Show me the money. You know, it can actually be a lot of work to work with a sponsor, because they have usually a schedule of when they want you to release the video. And oftentimes my schedule changes out on the road. You know, I have a certain number of videos planned, but maybe a game gets rained out or something historic happens and I have to do other videos quickly to cover it. And I'm often many videos behind. So I can be 2 weeks behind in terms of posting something. So, you know, if they want a video like at the first of the month, I have to plan ahead like 7 videos. So just the timing is difficult. And then they're going to send me a contract. and then there's filling out, all the tax forms, and then they'll send me the talking points, and then they want to see the video before I post it and review it, and then they'll send me visuals and graphics to go in the video, and it makes the editing more difficult. And, it can be a lot of work just for one promo. So, I want to get paid if I'm going to spend that kind of effort and really have it potentially disrupt my schedule. The best sponsor that I've worked with over the last few years is SeatGeek, the ticket app. And I've had, I'm trying to think, I guess 3 different season-long contracts with them where they've wanted 2 promos from me per month for 7 months, like April through the postseason in October. So, that's really been great working with them, getting into a routine. I didn't do anything with them in 2020 because there were basically no fans in stadiums. There were no tickets to be bought for the most part. But, hoping to get back in the groove with them, and then other people just find me and they want to work with me.
Definitely. That's super cool. I guess, too, with the whole 2020 thing, since we can segue directly into this question, COVID's definitely affecting everybody in the way that they work, in the way that things happen, how they're seeing their friends, how they're seeing their families. And I think this is especially true for you because you were going to live stadiums where it's packed full of people and all sorts of things are happening. You're traveling to get to these places. So what does 2020 look like for you? I know that we had a conversation about how you went to the opening of the Texas stadium and how that all played out, but I'll let you kind of fill in the blanks there.
When the season first got delayed, there was almost a weird sense of relief that I had, because what people don't realize, like, nobody would expect me to say this, but my favorite time of year is when there's no baseball. I love the winter. I love the off season. I need it to recharge. That's when I get to do everything else in life that I don't get to do during the season because baseball completely takes over my life. And every year I'm always like, oh, I wish I had more time in the off season. And I certainly didn't draw it up like this in my brain. Like I didn't want there to be a pandemic that wiped out the season, but I tried to appreciate the silver lining. And it's like, okay, well, now I don't have to be on the road all the time, waking up with 2 hours of sleep, blah, blah, blah. I don't mean to sit here and complain about how hard my life is. Like, I go to baseball games for a living and I make videos. It's pretty cool, but it is also very draining. Let's be real. So I just appreciated having the extra time. I was really just chilling at home and getting all kinds of other stuff done. And when the games did start, I hit the road a little bit, made some road trips with a videographer. There were still some mini adventures to be had outside of stadiums. And it was even possible for me to catch baseballs that were hit completely out of stadiums, in some cases even thrown out of the stadiums by employees and players. So I ended up making it to 9 games at 6 different stadiums this year. And the final 2 games that I attended were in Arlington, Texas. The Texas Rangers opened up a brand new stadium this year, Globe Life Field. And for the entire Major League season, all 30 teams, there were no fans allowed anywhere until this one stadium in October when a certain round of the playoffs began. And so they allowed 29% capacity, and the stadium holds more than 40,000 fans. So I guess there were a little more than 10,000 fans per game. And I decided to take the risk with COVID and go out there. I just couldn't bear the thought of sitting at home and watching these games on TV with fans in the stands and not being part of it. And I went and I was super careful. And when I came home, I quarantined alone for 2 weeks in New York City. Never got COVID, never had any symptoms. So that all worked out. I feel lucky. But this whole year it was weird and it was scary, but there was also a sense of peace and tranquility with it for me.
Yeah, I think this year has definitely taught everybody to be thankful for what you have and kind of look at situations and say, okay, this is something that's going on and it's terrible, but let's figure out things that we can do to make ourselves productive and ourselves better as human beings, or ourselves better as business owners, and all those sorts of things. So moving on from that, so let's say for our younger listeners or listeners that are just trying to start a business, what advice would you either give them or give yourself, say 5 or 10 years ago, that would have made a monumental impact on your business or your life? If I could do it over again, I guess I would have started sooner.
and I would have, I guess, recognized all the potential sources of income. Like I was very, very late to get into the merch game. And from what I understand about YouTubers, there's really three main ways that you can monetize. It's like the videos themselves will generate ad revenue. Then additionally, you can work with sponsors. And beyond that, there's merch. And I was very late to get into merch. I feel like I left a lot of money on the table. And you know, if you're not selling yourself as the product and you don't have merch and you're not doing YouTube, but you know, you're still a business owner, I guess really just try to imagine how you could make money going down any particular path and then really jump on that. I guess that would probably be a big piece of advice.
Yeah, and I think with that, because we're a web design agency, that utilizing the proper technologies and utilizing everything that you can do on the internet, so making sure that you're using social media, making sure that if you could be selling merchandise as a business, you think down that path. And those are things that we can consult with you about, having those conversations about, well, we're looking to do X, Y, and Z with our business. Well, what about A, B, and C that you forgot about? And I think while we were working together too, we brought your website from the one that you made on your own, and then we brought it to a more modernized one, and then we integrated the shopping features to it, so you could be selling merchandise that you're working with another third-party company that produces the merchandise, and it's almost like a completely hands-off experience for you, where you're just making money and you send out the orders when you need to, or the company that you're working with sends out those orders for you. So
Yeah, exactly.
technology. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, having a passive income is such a beautiful thing. What I do is not totally passive because I'm out there on the road a lot. And, you know, like I said, I don't sleep a whole lot during the season, and the rest of my life gets disrupted. It's a very busy, hectic life. But, you know, just like teachers can take the summer off, it's like I can take the winter off. I don't need to really be doing anything, but there's still a lot of people watching my videos and I'm making money from that. And now the t-shirts are selling a little more, like a nice little bump around the holidays. So it's like, I love the idea of money coming in. My dad, like I said, who was a writer, he called book royalties, he referred to it as pillow money, because when his head is on the pillow, he's making money. And, you know, it's sort of like a basic concept that I think everybody can appreciate. Just like you can be not working at one moment, but still having money come in at that moment. But I wasn't pursuing that early as like a business principle. It just didn't occur to me how important that was or how to achieve that. And, you know, with the internet and various technologies and the way that you can integrate all the moving parts on websites, like there's a lot of potential. And I think finding ways for all the pieces to fit together, you know, one social media app can promote the other, which then leads to the merch, which then leads to this, which like it can all come together and have this beautiful cohesion. And I think that's what I'm still trying to get better at. And I would encourage people out there to really work on bringing all the parts together like that.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that our company is working on right now, to produce content and videos that are going to help people automate a lot of those things and really dive deep into thinking about how their business can benefit from utilizing technology and connecting things, and maybe even think about things that they didn't even think were possible with their business. So kind of getting those ideas into your head and then kind of pursuing them and making sure that you're optimizing and monetizing in any way that you can to bring in as much revenue as possible. Because like you said, pillow money, it's the best way to do things. And I kind of didn't realize it in my entrepreneurial life from the beginning on. So I started out with a car wash. And that is, I physically have to be there washing cars, or I physically have to be hiring people and then managing those people and then hiring a manager. And it's a whole process to build something like that. And then I moved on from that to waterproofing phones. And it was a product that I could sell online, and I could automate it and have it stored in a warehouse and then have everything automated. And I didn't really have to do anything. And it was just producing money. So it's like, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, this is where you can actually start making some money, because you only have 8 to 10 hours in a day that you can work productively. What if you could sell a product or a service 24 hours a day, 365 days a year in all the countries around the world to 100,000 people at a time, rather than one person or 2 people at a time, 8 hours a day? So
Exactly. And I guess the limitation for me doing that is that I actually have to be at stadiums to do these videos. And just like you said, you have 8 to 10 hours in the day to work. There is a finite amount of baseball season. There's a finite number of games and stadiums and teams, and I can only do so much before I get burned out. So, that's one thing that holds me back. There's a lot of YouTubers that don't need to travel to do their videos. They film stuff at home. Their videos are mainly just them talking or analyzing things, reacting to things. I went to a YouTube workshop in New York City, I guess a couple of years ago, and I met some big YouTubers from all over the place. And, there was one guy, I think, with over 1 million subscribers, and his thing, he does puppet shows, like at home in this little teeny set that he builds, like almost sock puppets. And it's like, man, he's not paying to travel. He's not on the road. He's not even paying a videographer. He films it and edits it himself, like in his living room. And he's making huge money doing that. So, I have to figure out as the years go by and I maybe have less time or less patience or energy to be on the road so much, how is this going to work for me? Am I going to do more local games, or will I transition to something else in the baseball world, or just retire? I don't know, but it's definitely something on my mind.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess moving into the next segue here that I think is a good one. You wrote 3 books. I know you talked about one earlier that you wrote it when you're 19. Your dad helped you edit and do those things and kind of propel that. So you wrote 3 books. Kind of, how did that process look like? And it sounds like your dad helped you get started into that. So
he absolutely did. If my dad had not been a writer, I am certain I never would have written a book. And, if my dad were, let's say, a Division I college baseball coach, I bet I would have played professional baseball. I think it's very easy to follow in one's footsteps. He was a great mentor. The process for me, in terms of writing books, I mean, the first one, I didn't have a publisher or an agent lined up. I mean, I just wrote the damn thing and then looked for someone who wanted to publish it. And that took a long time. I actually went back to school, back to college for my sophomore year, and an agent had taken on my book and was sending it out. And I put it out of my mind. It was almost like I wrote the book for the challenge of writing it, but didn't expect it to get published. And I was back to living college life, and I had my girlfriend and I had my friends, and I ran a Scrabble club, and I was enjoying life in college. And then one day I heard that 2 different publishers were interested in this book, and it was like, what? Really? Like, this thing is actually going to have a life beyond, sitting in my New York City bedroom one summer cranking it out. So that was pretty cool. And that turned into a media blitz in and of itself when I was in college. The whole summer of '99, when that book came out, was just like one big media tour for me. So that really put me on the map as far as being someone in the baseball world that other fans were aware of. And it made it easier to then get a job writing for minor league baseball. And then when I wrote my next book, which didn't come out till 2007, that one was called Watching Baseball Smarter. Again, I didn't have an agent or a publisher. I spent a few years writing it little by little here and there, because I was still trying to live my life, and I was in my 20s and, going and doing all the stupid things in New York City that someone in their 20s does. So it took a while. That book, I kind of knew all along, like, this is a great book and it better get published. I just kind of assumed it would, and it did. Again, it got rejected a lot at first, but then got a good offer for it, and it got out there in the world. And that made the 3rd book easier to write, in the sense that I then had an established agent with that one. The same publisher who published my 2nd book gave me a contract in advance of writing the 3rd book. So I knew I had the money up front, and I could really set aside a year of my life pretty much to work on it full time. So for a while, for a solid decade of my life, writing was the number one thing that I did with my time. If I was not documenting my life in writing somehow, or writing about something, I just felt incomplete. Like, people need coffee to function. I could not function if I were not writing. And so that drive really propelled me into putting a few books out there into the world.
Yeah, they're really awesome books. We'll leave a link down in the description if anyone wants to check them out. I guess with that too, like talking about writing, and your dad was a writer, and you kind of understand the importance of words and how powerful they are, and combining them, and like even on a website, or if you're trying to sell a book or whatever, the wording that you use is very important to
So
kind of
important.
the emotions and feelings that you can kind of allow somebody to think about and kind of lay something in their mind, and they're like, wow, that's really thought provoking, or wow, that's really something that I want to find more about, right? Do you agree?
I agree so much. I feel like I can tell a lot about someone based on how they write. I've done I have met thousands of people in person that I encountered first on the internet. I run a writing group, and there have probably been about 2,000 people who've passed through. And I started advertising on Craigslist, so everybody was just a stranger, and I had to gauge whether or not they were insane before I let them in. And now the group is on Meetup, and it's the same thing. I've done a ton of online dating where, again, you read people's profiles, you see how they message, and then you meet them in person. And just so many baseball fans have gotten in touch with me on social media and just writing emails, and then I end up meeting them at stadiums. So like three main ways that I have met so many people. And so, yeah, I'm really good at my own internal algorithm of figuring out what someone is going to be like based on how they put language together in the written form. And just anything that I read online, websites, anything else, like, yeah, I'm totally judging it. Like that's my gift, but also my curse as a writer. Anytime I see writing, I'm analyzing it. And I guess two main pieces of advice for writing: just don't have any excess words. My dad was always saying, cut the fat. Any word that you can eliminate, pretty much you should. You really want it to be punchy and move along. And other than that, just don't make it mechanical. Don't sound like you're a robot or you're writing a textbook. Like, have some personality, make it conversational, the way people talk, and just make it fun and punchy and flowy. And that's really what I look for in language, some unique style. And so everything on my website, I try to have just written in a way where you almost feel like someone's talking to you if you're reading it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is if you're building a website or your business, you don't want to sound like a robot, because it's like you're a human being. You don't want to buy from a robot. If you go on a website and you get a really cold feeling about it, you're not going to want to purchase from that company. Or maybe you are because they're the only company that does that, but that's very few, far and in between. And now it's more about authenticity than ever. It's like if you go to a website and you see their social media, you see what they're writing about, you see how they're portraying themselves, and it's very like personal and warm, you're going to want to buy from them, because you just get a good feeling inside, and you know that they're going to be a good company to work with.
Yeah. And, a lot of websites I see of just sort of individual people, why are their bios, their little about sections, they're all written in the third person? Like, oh, so-and-so got their training as an actor at this school, and then they went on to, it's like, it's your website. Why don't you write it in the first person? So, everything on my website, it uses the word I. And again, I just want people to feel like, hi, it's me, actually the one answering your emails, and I'm the one that put this all together. I mean, Justin, you really put together my website, but I control all the content. And yeah, I want it to be a personal, fun experience when people are on there browsing.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess moving forward to our like final question and wrapping things up here. So besides Zack Hample as the business mogul, who is Zack Hample the person? Like, what do you like? What do you like to do in your free time when you're not in the baseball season?
I appreciate that question. The number one thing that makes me happy and gets me fired up is who I am spending time with. And really, no matter where I am in the world or what I'm doing, I'm going to be most excited with the people that I'm with. So my happiest moments involve friends and girlfriends, and just it's the human element, and it's that interpersonal stuff that really does it for me. So in the off season, normally when there's not a pandemic, I am extremely social. I really didn't have any friends growing up, and I managed to piss off pretty much every other kid my age from about the ages of maybe 7 to 17. but I kind of figured out how to not be totally annoying all the time. And I do feel lucky to have a very large circle of friends. So just keeping up with people and seeing them in person when I can. But, you know, I try to, I'm a fan of healthy living. I try to eat well. I exercise pretty regularly. I geek out tremendously on music. I love documenting things. So it used to be writing a journal. Then it was writing a blog. Now it's more videos and photo stuff. I've been spending a lot of time during quarantine really scanning every family photo ever, as well as boxes of my old papers and love letters and, I mean, you name it, and just organizing all that stuff. I've played competitive Scrabble. I have a few world records on classic arcade video games. I have a rubber band ball that weighs more than I do. It weighs a lot more than I do. It's 336 pounds, and I probably only spend about an hour a month on it at this point, just adding a few to keep the outside layer fresh. But there's just like all these weird things that keep me going, sort of oddball hobbies, but really it all comes down to people for me. That's what really fires me up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that's what kind of ignites a lot of people. And what we're realizing during this pandemic is like the things and all these noises that are happening in our lives. It brings us back to the root. It's like the people that you're around and the quality of like your life, having to make sure that you're eating healthy, making sure that you're exercising, and making sure that you're spending time with those people that you love.
Well
I think
said.
with that, yeah, thank you. So with that too, I guess like what's like one or maybe a couple of your like your fondest memories from your life?
Wow. um, you know, having gone back through so many photos from the family, including many as a kid. I mean, there's hundreds of baby pictures of myself that I've scanned, and I don't remember being an infant, of course, but one of my early memories that I now have a great scanned photo of, I just remember being with, I mean, it wasn't like this monumental life event, but it was just so tranquil, just being with my parents on the top of this smallish mountain. It was like a meadow covered mountain with tall grass and just gorgeous views. I guess it was in upstate New York, at this inn. I remember it was like named after the two founders. It was Steve and Kendra's. And that name has always been in my mind, and just how beautiful it was to be in nature. And I was like 5 years old, and I do remember that, and just sort of feeling free up there on the top of the mountain and feeling loved by my parents, and my dad had me on his shoulders. And, you know, that's just a memory that's passed through my brain a lot lately, because I've seen that photo a number of times, having scanned it and photoshopped it and now trying to find the right folder for it. You know, I have tons of incredible baseball moments and memories, but those pale in comparison to being in love and being with the person that I feel like I'm meant to be with, you know, when that has happened in the past. So, you know, times with girlfriends, when those moments have been as good as those can get, that dwarfs everything else, basically. I love, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I think everybody in this world loves to be loved, right? Like everybody wants to come home to a warm household with somebody that they love that's inside of it.
I mean, I know one guy who's been single forever, and he says he's happy being single, and he's like, I don't have to answer to anybody else. And it's like, okay. But I think other than him, yeah, most people want to be loved, or, you know, like you said, come home to that household.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's all we have time for today. And I just want to thank you so much for your time being on the podcast and kind of sharing everything with our listeners. And hopefully we can have you on soon.
Absolutely, man. It was great to chat. I appreciate all the questions, got into some good stuff. And yeah, we'll be in touch again soon for sure.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Zach. Warm aloha to everybody. See you next time.